Hello and welcome to the Get French Football News preview show on today, December 8th, 2016. I'm Eric Devin, and joining me are Adam White and Nathan Staples. We'll also be joined in about 20 minutes by Portuguese football expert Tiago Estevao to discuss the appointment of new Nantes manager Sergio Conciecao, appointment at the Breton club. But first, here are all the latest updates from Ligue 1's European representatives. Paris Saint-Germain had held the advantage in Group A, needing only a win to advance in first place ahead of Arsenal, but were lucky to escape with a draw at the Parc des Princes. Visiting Ludogorets had gone ahead twice before Angel Di Maria equalized at the death, a 2-2 draw condemning the Parisians to second place in the group. On Wednesday, Lyon hit the woodwork twice, but Sevilla did the same once, and a scoreless draw wasn't enough to see the hosts overtake the Spanish side for second place in their group. Monaco, meanwhile, played a heavily rotated side in Leverkusen and lost 3-0, but still topped their group, while Saint-Etienne won 3-2 in Belgium against Anderlecht, finishing top of their group in a dramatic come-from-behind win that saw Alexander Sotolen net a brace before Kevin Monet-Paquet hit the winner 15 minutes from time. Nice, meanwhile, played an exceptionally young side in their final European match, winning against Krasnodar 2-1 with goals from Maxime Lemarchand and substitute Alexis Bossetti. So let's start then, gents, with the Champions League. Speaking to you, Adam, about PSG 2, Ludogorets 2. The absences of Marco Verratti and Adrien Rabiot made some enforced changes for Unai Emery, but the Spaniard also neglected to include first-choice fullback Serge Aurier and Levin Kurzawa from the start, and Kurzawa did prove the difference with the assist for Di Maria's goal. Ahead of a big match with Nice this weekend, wanting to rest his best players. Adam, was this hubris on the part of PSG? Even the goals that they did score, had a moment of an element of luck to them.
Yeah, absolutely. They did. I was astounded by this game. I mean, I think it definitely is an element of hubris there to some extent. Someone that worked at Football said to me, "Is there any chance they're an Arsenal fan? Is there any chance of PSG messing this up?" And I said, "No, absolutely none. I cannot see it." And I was amazed at the way the game unfolded. I thought the only two players from Paris Saint-Germain's point of view that came out of it with any credit were Hatem Ben Arfa, who's been fantastic since he's been given more of a chance for Emery, and Lucas, who had a great game. But the other 9 players really were quite terrible. I was very disappointed. But I think it's kind of a mental issue with PSG in the Champions League, in the way that, in fact, French clubs have underperformed historically in the Champions League, and I think it's sort of a mental block for PSG because there's so much pressure on them to do well in this competition. And I feel like the side that was put out against Ludogorets on Tuesday or Wednesday night was should have won that game and won it comfortably, but they conspired to leave the lad who scored the first goal completely free for the header. Marquinhos' mistake for the second goal, perhaps a bit of a fault to Alphonse Areola as well there. I mean, I think they sort of shot themselves in the foot. And although it's a difficult competition and it's something that's going to be difficult to win anyway, I felt like that team should have done far better. And it's something they keep doing. Like last season with Manchester City, when they played, they really should have won that game and been in the semi-finals. There was a huge opportunity there, and they sort of managed to conspire to shoot themselves in the foot again with Blanc's bizarre 3-5-2, and they haven't really played that at all. I feel like it's a mental block for PSG. I don't know that their team, especially, is substandard by any means. I think it's good enough to make the last 4 in Champions League, but I think it's becoming a mental obstacle for them. Something that there's so much pressure on. It's that their only real objective as a club is to do well in Champions League, and I don't know. Maybe perhaps there's too much pressure on them, and it's something that they need to address definitely, because it's Emery. The reason Emery's there, and it's the reason most of the players are signed. And I felt like they shot themselves in the foot on Wednesday night. On Tuesday night. It was very disappointing.
Well, the winter window will be opening here in about 3 weeks. Do PSG need to bring in players to improve this side, or is it simply down to work ethic and health in the cases of several players, as Pastore, Verratti, Rabiot? Is that enough to get this team where they need to be, or should they bring in a player or two in January?
I think it's very difficult to complain at the stand of their team. You look at their first 11; it's very, very talented. Di Maria's underperformed this season. I'm not saying he needs to be replaced. I think he has to play better than the critics have afforded him that credit. I think he's been slightly better than that. And you look at Edinson Cavani, he's a proven goal scorer. He's got 17, 18 goals in the last 18, 19 games with PSG. He's scoring goals at least. I don't know that his finishing is that consistent. I think he misses too many chances, but he is scoring a lot of goals. Lucas Moore's been fantastic. Ben Arfa's been fantastic since he came in. Marco Verratti's a world-class player. Thiago Motta's still very, very good. Defensively, they've got a fantastic back four. Areola's been a bit bit flappy recently, but he's still a very good goalkeeper. I think they could strengthen their squad, but to say that they need to improve their first 11 to get, to improve on how they've done before would be a little bit unusual from my point of view. I think, as I said before, I think it's a bit of a mental issue. I think they could improve their squad in certain areas, like the squad in total. Perhaps they need another striker, another source of goals that can support Cavani or even like challenge Cavani. So if he is in that poor run of form, he's missing chances, he can come in and replace him and perhaps give him some competition for his place. Perhaps they need another winger because Ben Arfa seems to be a central player in Emery's eyes. Perhaps they need someone to challenge Di Maria because he's assured of his place in that team. So I think there are options to improve the squad, but I don't know about the first 11 as it stands. I still think that they're almost like Spurs. It's weird. It's like a bit of a Spursy issue. They seem to reach a certain point and then fall at the last hurdle. And the fact that Arsenal, who are a team that often are sort of taking the mick out of a little bit because they get to that period in February and they sort of manage to sort of go out of 3 competitions at once. It was almost like that PSG were even worse than that last night. They set themselves up for the only objective that they needed to accomplish in the first half of the season and somehow managed to not win the game. It was very, very unusual. But I think as their first 11 goes, they're very good. Perhaps the squad could use a little bit of improvement though.
All right, and just one final point. Nathan, if you want to come in on this as well, you're more than welcome. Before the season, it surprised many observers that Javier Pastore had been given the number 10 shirt. That obviously shows a great reliance and trust and faith in the player on the part of Emery. Was it wrong to do that given his injury history?
Possibly. I think you make an excellent point that he's missed a lot of time again this season, and he missed a lot of time last season after really having that breakthrough season back again, because he struggled when he initially came to France, and there was a lot of protests against really him being in the side, and then he was out of the side, and then he came back in and really showed his quality. And he's a talented player, but it's a good question because is it really so? I always think that a number thing is a strange thing to give as a mantle, really. I know the significance it has historically, but at the same time, it seems a strange one. I wouldn't have given him the pressure, really, because he's under enough pressure to keep fit in the first place. I think he would, giving him that number 10 slot ahead of some other players maybe that they might have given it to as well. It shows maybe a little bit of favouritism, but this is a PSG side that we should be a lot better than they are. I think that last night was the other night was embarrassing. I think they've been appalling in the last couple of games and lethargic. Defensively, they were absent at times last night, and the equaliser is incredibly lucky. I mean, Di Maria runs off as if he scored the winner in the World Cup final, but it's he's scuffed it unbelievably, and it's kind of wobbled in because the keeper can't quite react. A better goalkeeper absolutely saves that easily, but they need to have a long, hard look at themselves. They've got a difficult game on Sunday, and they're going to be under the cosh enormously if they lose that one. But the Pastore one, it's a strange one. Looking back at it now, if he would have remained fit, because he's such a talented player, you could have seen him possibly showing that worth for the 10th shirt. But I agree, Eric. It does seem in hindsight like a strange one now.
All right, moving on then to Lyon and their scoreless draw against Sevilla. Mathieu Valbuena once again showed his class, and Nabil Fekir looked sharp as well coming on as a substitute. Lyon have looked better and better with Le Petit Velo in the starting 11. It's a surprising turn of events from earlier in the season. But they were unlucky, though, as Sergio Rico made several fine saves and they hit the woodwork twice. Champions League effort is certainly disappointing, but can this team make a real run in the Europa League? They will be seeded, of course. They do seem to be finally hitting their stride in attack, at least aside from the woodwork. Adam, what do you think? Is this a team that can make a run to, say, the quarterfinals as they had a few years ago?
I think absolutely. The only thing that comes through here with Lyon is, do they prioritise the Europa League because it's a competition I think they're good enough to win? Although obviously some very, very good teams in there, but does it affect, given the strenuous nature of the Europa League and the schedule, does it affect their league form? I would imagine that getting back into the Champions League is their priority. And obviously winning the Europa League is a very, very difficult task. They may be good enough to do it, but it would still be a very, 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 very big achievement if they could do that. So I think, yes, they can go on a run, but whether it's they need to, or whether it's something that should be prioritized from the club's point of view. I'd love to see them do brilliantly well in Europa because I think they're a really great side to watch on their day. But whether it's something that the club will prioritize or see as important as opposed to coming in the top 2 or top 3 in the league, which is going to be very, very difficult this season as well, get back into the Champions League. It's almost a case of, do they risk it? Do they risk the run and playing their better players in this competition? As much as it would be great, perhaps it's not at this stage of their development worth it. Maybe they need to be a regular Champions League team, and third place might be a better achievement than getting to the quarters of the Europa League. I think they'd probably, if they had the choice between the two, they'd take third place every time. They've got the quality to do really well in this competition. It's just whether they want to use it, I think.
All right. And Nathan, what about yourself? What are your feelings on Lyon in the Europa League? Should they make a run? They do seem to have depth, the likes of Cornet, Grenier is coming back into fitness, Jallet is still to return. They have certainly more than 18 players available to them. It would seem to have the depth to make a run, but the league should be the priority, or?
Yeah, I think the league should definitely be the priority. I mean, they're already a little bit off the pace at the moment. They're 10 points behind Paris Saint-Germain, who are in third. They want to try and push for Champions League football again if they can. I mean, it's not going to be difficult for them to finish fourth, but to catch the 3 that are really running away with it a little bit compared to the rest of them, they do need to really focus on that. But yeah, I think it might depend on the draw more than anything. I think you're right, they've got some interesting players that they can use, but whether they quite have a complete depth to challenge on both ends is another question entirely. Because if it starts, they get far and it starts hindering their league form, they'll be annoyed that they'll have to make another Europa League run again next season. But I think in that first round you tend to get, because there's so many teams in it and being seeded does help quite a bit. There's the likelihood that there's about 14, 15 teams that they won't mind facing. So at least that first stage might be a simple hit of, let's use the young players and give them a bit of a run out. But in terms of going further, I suppose again it depends on who they draw in that next round. Once it starts getting more difficult and once they start facing bigger teams with bigger squads, it might be wise to make sure Ligue 1's the main priority.
All right, sticking with our theme of young players, that I wanted to ask you, Nathan, about Monaco's trip to Bayer, or to Leverkusen, that is, to play Bayer. There was nothing in Monaco's trip to the Bayern yesterday in terms of its effect, but Nathan, talk to me about these young players that Jardim started. We've several of whom we've barely seen this season. Thinking particularly of Kevin Ndoran, Corentin Jean, Abdou Diallo. We've seen Bosfilia and Touré to some extent. Did any especially impress or disappoint for you?
I'll go through them as you wrote them down, actually. I think Ndoran, I like him quite a bit, but he did play out of position in this one. He played as a defensive midfielder instead of a centre-back, and he did seem a little bit out of depth without someone like Bakayoko or Fabinho next to him. It was Jean Moutinho, who's obviously more offensively minded, and that really exposed him quite a bit, and Bayer really exposed the areas around him, especially someone like Julian Brandt, who's one of the best young players in Europe really at the moment. I watched him play live against Leipzig a couple of weeks ago, and he was by far Bayer's best player, and he's an absolute fantastic talent, I think, and someone to certainly watch out for. He'll give them a lot of money soon, but Duran was he just seemed a little bit lost, unfortunately. I don't mind him playing that position, but I think you needed to play someone stronger next to him. I thought Corentin Jean was pretty decent. I thought he tried to contribute as much as he could. Maybe should have. He's unlucky to not score a little goal where he flicks it on the post. I don't think I'd quite like to see more of him this season because there's so many striking options. He's someone who maybe should look for a loan move in January. Diallo gives away a penalty. He didn't have the best of games, although again, against Brandt, it's difficult to judge how well you can play really against such a talented player, but he did look under the cosh against someone of that talent. Bushilia didn't play too badly. I mean, he was maybe a little bit too restricted by Jardim. He was not quite flowing as we've seen him. We've seen him do much better in Liga. And Amami Touré was a little bit absent. A lot of Leverkusen's play came down that right-hand side rather than the left. So he wasn't really involved too much, and he wasn't really involved going forward because Monaco never really got into the final third of Bayer very often. So it's disappointing we didn't see it's disappointing we didn't see more from some of these young players. I'd like to see Duran maybe replace Jameson at the back and give him a rest as well. But the amount of players that they had out, it's not surprising that Bayer really ran away with this one.
What about Adama Traore? And Adam, you can feel free to jump in here too if you'd like. Big things have been expected for this youngster. He's a Malian international, had done exceptionally well at the under 20 World Cup a few years ago. And this surely would have been a match you would expect to start, especially ahead of the likes of Moutinho or Ndoran being pushed forward into midfield. Does he need to go out on loan? And if so, what are some good options in Liga?
Wow. Yeah, I think he's a good player. He's a player that I like, and I appreciate when he was he at Lille beforehand?
Yes.
Yes.
Yeah, I remember him. He was good. He performed really well coming off the bench, and in certain games where he was given a start under Girard, I think, at that point, and at Lille, and he looked good. But I think the problem with him is that he hasn't really been given the chance to develop. He's sort of been sitting on the bench at Monaco a little bit, and hasn't really been given the games that he would have hoped for at this stage of his career. So I'm a little bit worried that his growth as a footballer has been stunted by not perhaps going out on loan again. Obviously, Monaco wanted to keep him and keep under their wing, if you like. But I'm not sure that's been the best career move. So I think you're absolutely right. I think it is time for him to go out on loan. And I think there's a lot of options for him in league. And I think someone like Toulouse, Pascal Dupraz would be a really good mentor. He gets the best out of his players. He's brought young players through really well. People like Alexis Blanc have done. Alban Lafont, Issa Diop have done fantastically well under him since he took over. And they're a side performing well. They're a side that would to suit his talent. So that might be a good shout. Perhaps someone, even Lorient might be a decent call at the bottom of the league at the moment, but I imagine they're going to have a fair amount of money to spend given the Guerrero and Dong sales from the summer that they haven't really spent yet. So I imagine that they'll do better in the second half of the season because Sony's getting the best out of some of those players at the moment. So there are options all across the league. If you ask me, Gangon might be a really good shout from as well. He's a really good manager. So I think there's definitely options, and I think he'll be in demand too.
Yeah, maybe he'd move back to Lille even. I think that might even benefit him.
Yeah, they need some pace, don't they?
Toulouse, I think, is a great shout. I think that the injury to Blanc, he and Bodije have played pretty much every match in that midfield too, and I think Traore would be a nice third option, especially if Toulouse do end up making a cup run. Moving briefly through the Europa League matches, Adam, just really quickly, thrilling match in Anderlecht, Saint-Etienne winning 3-2. If Galtier can rouse these players with this sort of performance on demand at a tough arena, why aren't we seeing more of this in the league?
I have no idea. It's very weird. I think he's definitely got a good squad there and lots of good players. I think there was a lot of tough talking after the game in Rennes. Vincent Pajo in particular and Gautier himself both said that there was, they had a lot of sort of frank words between players and staff after that game because they looked so lethargic. I think though their fatigue has been catching up with them a little bit, and maybe a bit of a kick out the backside before this game from Gautier got this sort of, especially the second half performance was brilliant. That kind of performance out of them that they've been struggling to get on a regular basis, and I think they are going to struggle to get on a regular basis given this schedule because they look tired. They look absolutely shattered in especially at the weekend against Rennes. I'm not surprised there was some tough talking after that game because they were barely in that game. They could have lost it by a lot more. I think the difference there was Soderlund in this game. He's not a player that's been heralded since he's come into Ligue 1. He was top scorer, I think, for Rosenborg the season before he joined, but still, our Norwegian analyst football radar often said to me that he scores goals, but he also misses lots of chances. And in Ligue 1, you can't do that, and he has missed quite a few chances. But although both his finishes were quite fortuitous today, I think he was getting into the right position. So it was probably one of his better performances in a Saint-Etienne shirt. And Kevin Malcuit as well, who's gone on strength for strength this season, was great today and great cross for the header. So I think it was maybe a sort of a circumstance that got that performance rather than it being something that's going to be able to happen on a regular basis. But they are capable of it. They've got good players. It's just whether Gauta can find a way to get that performance on a regular basis.
All right, quickly again with Nice, Krasnodar, Nathan. Similar to Monaco, Nice played a cadre of youngsters today. Any that stood out for you?
I thought Marcel, the one in the midfield that I've seen before, I think he's played a one Ligue 1 game as well near the start of the season. I thought he had some nice touches. It was really a nothing game. The first half was at walking pace. The second half was suddenly kind of sprung into life. Krasnodar scored a relatively simple goal and a penalty for Alexis Bossetti on a terrible challenge on Lusamba that got whoever it was, I can't remember the name of the player that sent off there. So Andreas Granfist, I remember. He got sent off for, and it was just a little bit of a nothing game. It was clearly a free swing by the amount of young players that were thrown out there really by Favre. It was almost like he picked what I do on Football Manager, which is change every single player for a cup game that doesn't matter. That seemed to happen. It was nice to see Balotelli play out, though. He needed that. It was a strange game because it was almost like a friendly, which is why it was probably nice for him to get that run out. But yeah, there was little really learned in this one, I don't think, other than probably what we already knew, unfortunately.
All right. So that concludes Nice's Europa League campaign, unfortunately. We have a guest today. That's Thiago Esteval. Am I saying that right, Thiago?
Yeah, you're fine. You're fine, buddy. Like most people can pronounce it anyway, so I just run with it.
All right. Thiago is a writer for Who Scored and for Portugal, and we're bringing him in to speak about the new manager for Nantes, and that's Sergio Conciecao. Is that in the ballpark? Conciecao.
Right. Yeah, you're fine.
Yeah, so I guess, Thiago, just take a couple minutes to talk about his career trajectory. What's his style? Is he an attacking and defending coach? What's his attitude towards young players? Not have a lot of exciting young players.
So, firstly, like, you guys are aware of his professional career as a player, right? Or more or less?
I know the name, yeah.
So, like, as a player, he was this youngster for Porto who went on loan a couple times. Then he came back and had a very good season for Porto in '97, I believe, 96, 97. And when they won the league, and then he played very well for Lazio, where Lazio paid a bunch of money for him, I think. And he played very well in Italy for Lazio and for Parma. And then he had a couple of not so great stints with Inter, I believe, and a couple more teams. Even came back to Porto, but then he did really well with Standard Liège in Belgium. So, like, as a player, he's a very experienced player. He had like over 50 caps for Portugal. So I think that, firstly, I gotta admit, I only watched one Nantes match this season, which was the 6-0 against Lyon. So I don't have the best impression of them this season. I'm sorry, but I actually watched that match twice, but because for some reason it was on replay the following day. So I watched it twice, and I thought it was really, really bad. So I'm glad they're changing something. But he, as a player, he was very, very good. He was very good in Belgium, despite the low amount of time he was there. So, although I'm not completely sure if he speaks French, I'm assuming he understands it pretty decently, at least, because he played in Italy, played in Belgium, so at least he has a bunch of influences. He's not like someone that just saw the game in Portugal or just played it here. And even when he started coaching, his first team as a coach, well, as an assistant coach, but was Standard Liège. He went back and he coached them as an assistant coach. So that's where he started. So I think that in that sense, it's going to be very important for Nantes. A bit like, all right, I'm going to make a bit of an outrageous comparison, so don't kill me for it. But a bit like when Zidane came into Real Madrid and just picked up the locker room because he was an ex-player and the players trusted him and felt like he knew what was like to be there after the whole fallout with Rafa Benitez, right? So I think something similar will happen. He has a lot of that attitude of, he's not a politically correct manager, if you will. He is someone that always spits his mind. He tends to be somewhat controversial with the press, and he tends to have a lot of fallouts with the press, a lot of fallouts with club boards. I believe he only had a second season as a coach in academia, so he only got his contract renewed once. But it's not all bad news. No, but he's a very decent coach, and he's a very decent coach in specific moments. And this is his specific moment, which is to take a team out of a run of bad form. He's very good at it. He's done it a couple of times. He often, actually, I think almost in every single one of his teams, he came in halfway through the season. I think he had like 3 preseasons, maybe, whatever. But like he came in halfway through the season with Guimarães, with Académica, and he's a very good coach to just line up the guys in the locker room and just go in. He's a very, like, morally, he just psychologically gets the guys running. He fires the team up like few do. And then another good thing about him is that he has a very good a very good relationship or a very good history with youngsters, which I saw briefly the Nantes squad today. I was just looking at it. In fact, I'm looking at it now, and I'm aware. I'm fairly aware of a couple of the players, especially the two that came from Portugal this season. So Lima and Carlos, who both have over 1,000 minutes. So I'm assuming they've been used a lot.
Lima's a regular, so is Carlos. Yeah.
Yeah. So that's great to know. And those are both young players. I know a couple of other players. I just saw that he hasn't been getting many minutes. I don't know if he had an injury, but I really like what I saw from Thomas on the minutes I watched him last season, I believe. But I don't know what's happening with him. He has a few minutes only. But either way, he's a very decent coach with young players. He has a good history with Braga. He was one of the first players to work with Rafa Silva, who is a European champion now and now plays for Benfica. He also coached Deder in Braga. So if you guys don't know, he scored in the final. No. Anyway, no, he coached a bunch of young players. He has an history of like, this just came to mind. I was just watching the Europa League match of Apoel Beersheva against Southampton, and there's a Nigerian player for Apoel called John Agu, who was very, very good for Academica under Conceição, and is now a regular in the Nigerian national team as well. So he's a very good communicator, if you will, but he expects a man that's always screaming on the sidelines. He's never quiet. He's never happy with the press. He's never happy with the refs. He's going to need a lot of support from the Nantes fan base, which I believe is pretty good, right?
Oh, very much.
Yeah, they have a pretty good following, right? So they need to stick by him quite a lot, because what often gets him off teams is just fallouts, whether with the press or whether with the club boards, and not necessarily is the job he did. But he's a very solid coach. I think he's the right man for the job at the moment. We'll see how things pan out in a sense of how he deals with the French press and how he deals with the environment and all of that. But for Guimarães, he's a fearless, kind of straight in your face coach. You know what I mean? Mourinho-esque in that sense, if you will.
So your understanding is that he's someone who's been picked with consideration by Nantes Sport. He's not a name I think that I'm familiar with in terms of his managerial career, but due to his time in Belgium, his record developing young players, that they're from a Portuguese perspective, you do think that this is a manager who's been brought in with some degree of consideration on the part of the hierarchy.
Yeah, I believe so, especially because he's the type of guy that if my team was down in the relegation zone, and especially if my team could still climb back up, and Nantes is only 2 points under the rest of the table, right? They're only 2 points
Something
away
like
from
that.
being.
They're not cut adrift.
Yeah, so he's the type of guy to just come in and be extremely passionate, extremely confident, and he's gonna believe in the guys, and he's gonna develop. He tends to develop quite a connection with players, especially with young players, because he's gonna give them a chance for sure. Not like he has any other chance with Nantes, because Nantes does basically everyone's young, but except Vizcarrondo. Does Vizcarrondo still play?
Yes.
Yes. All right. I'm not crazy, right? All right. That's good to know, actually. But seriously, he's gonna give the youngster a chance, and there's gonna be a connection there for sure. And just in that sense, expect some result. Expect to run a run of results very quickly, at the start, just because of the impact of him coming in. And then I'm just more interested to see how we will continue it, because he normally tends to come in halfway through the season, but we're in December. We're not in March, you know what I mean? He has, with Academica, when he came in, he played 5 matches, and he saved them from relegation, and then he stayed for another season. Then he moved to Braga, who's obviously a bigger team, and that's another thing about him. With Braga, he got to the final of the Portuguese Cup, and I think Nantes is still both in the Cup and the Cup de League, right? They're both in.
Yes.
They are, right? So I believe he's someone that tends to take those other competitions into consideration as well. He's not someone that just focuses in the league. That with Braga, he got to the final of the cup, and then some would say unfairly lost to Sporting. He was leading until like the 89th minute or something, and then Sporting tied and turned it around after extra time. But so he had a very good cup run with Braga. Then he just got fired at the end of the season. His contract was not renewed, just because they just felt like he wasn't the man to continue with a longer project. So I think that's more of the difficulty with him. And then he eventually moved to Guimarães halfway through the next season. And Vitória Guimarães is the main rival to Braga, and he just doesn't care. He's that type of manager that just came in, and he's probably the only manager that went from one team to the other without that much backlash from the fans, just because he has such a passion and such a professional integrity. Thank you, and that the fans just backed him up. Both the Braga fans when he was with Braga, and then the Vitória fans when he was with Vitória. So in that sense, he's a very good coach. He's just, for the first season, he's the man. I'm just more interested to see how things will go like once April and May come around.
All right, well, thank you very much. You can follow Tiago on Twitter at Tiago, Tiago, Estev, ESTV. He writes for Portugal and Who Scored. He's a very smart read. He's written a couple pieces for the site as well, profiling Diego Carlos. When he arrived at Nantes, he's, for my money, one of the best writing about Portuguese football around.
Thank you very much.
Yes, thank you very much, Tiago.
I didn't come here for compliments, but I take them. So thank you very much, guys.
Thank you. Hopefully we'll speak to you soon if Portuguese and French teams are drawn together. It'd be great to have you back on to talk about that.
Just give me a ring and I'll be here. All right. Cheers, guys.
Thank you. All right. So moving on now, we are going to have to fly through our previews here. So quick update on our points total. Adam, you were not present last week and you have slipped slightly.
Oh, no.
Perhaps you're the new Liverpool. So the current standings are myself on 36, Adam on 35, Nathan on 28, and Peter on 26. We are going to be looking at 4 matches this week. Plenty of chances to catch up for everybody, well, except for Peter, who's not with us this week. So let's move quickly to tomorrow's match. That's Dijon hosting Marseille. Nathan, Marseille were imperious last week, and some have pointed to Florian Thauvint's performance as being the key to this. A win for OM would see them a provisional 7th heading into the weekend's matches, but even given a strong set of performances late, can we really look at this as an easy match, given how Dijon have frustrated similarly informed teams this season? Monaco in the recent past and Lyon earlier in the season come immediately to mind.
Absolutely not. I think you picked out 2 perfect games where they frustrated strong opponents, but I also watched them last Friday where they're 3-1 down against Caen, and in fairness, it was not a flattering scoreline in the first half. I thought Caen were excellent, and Dijon were down to 10 men not soon after that, and they clawed their way back in the second half. It's a mixture of Caen being lackadaisical and the force of will simply by Dijon to make something happen. And it was a cracking 3-3 game in the end. And in the end, Dijon maybe could have nicked it in the end, which is outstanding to say they played so long with 10 men. So, no, Marseille should know that they can't live this line down, that Dijon's going to simply be a walkover, because they've shown this season that not only can they be stubborn, but they can come back from adversity as well. So at no point can they take this lightly. They were much better last week than they have, and they've slowly grown into that performance. We've been waiting for that sort of explosion to really happen. And yeah, Florian Thauvin has absolutely been the key to all of that. He's been terrific for them. He's been probably by far their best player in the last couple of months. He's been a little bit of everything. He's tried to create. He's tried to will his team on. He's tried to be a rah-rah girl by saying all the positive things he wants to say about Marseille, about staying for the rest of his career and being that talisman. So him being in form, the rest of the players around him sort of feeding off that a little bit now. Now they've got a good manager and they're starting to see a light at the end of the tunnel. It's going to be a really, really interesting game, I think, this one, and possibly a really exciting one as well.
All right. Bearing that in mind, how exciting do you think it's going to be, Nathan? What is your score prediction for this?
It's a tough one, this one. I'm going to go for 2-1 Marseille.
Okay, Adam, yourself?
2-2.
2-2. I'll go for 1 for Dijon. I think we all think there's going to be goals. As observers of French football, we know that Dijon are a good team to watch. Marseille is a little bit for that billing as well. So Adam, coming on to you now. The early match on Saturday sees Bordeaux hosting Monaco. Bordeaux have been really poor of late, and I wrote in our column that I think that Gourvenec's getting it wrong tactically. Adam, how would you respond to that? Am I on the right path here? How would you set this team up to succeed?
It's an interesting one. I do agree. I think it's not. It's definitely partly a tactical issue. It's, in fact, I think it's like 80-90% a tactical issue, because I think, as I said before on the pod, I like what he's done in terms of philosophy, in terms of the club in general. He's got the fans back on side, and I feel like they're going forward in one sense. But I think he's struggling to sort of pick his best team. I'm not sure he knows what his best team is yet. He's sort of switched between 4-4-2 and 4-3-3 quite a lot this season, and it's whether he thinks he's got the players to play either of those formations, and I think he's a bit unsure. It's looking at their squad. I guess the question he needs to ask himself, as I imagine he has all season, is how does he get the best out of his best players? And that means Jeremy Toulon, can we get the best out of him? Adam Ounas, can we get him to play as well as he did last season? Jerry Menez is a really, really good player with great pedigree. Can we get the best out of him? How do we get the best out of those sort of players? And I think the issue is that they're lacking a focal point that will get the best out of, especially with Ounas and Menez. I don't know that they've got a central striker, which is why they went 4-4-2 for so long, because it sort of covered that issue up, papered over the cracks that they don't really have a focal point. I really think they're missing Diabate. I think if Diabate was still in this team, they'd go 4-3-3 straight away. They'd have Menez and Ounas either side, and they'd have that really solid midfield for Toulon, Placil, Sergio Conciecao in there occasionally too. And it would really give them that target man to play off that both those players could use as a focal point. And they simply don't have that this season. Diego Rolón was brilliant in 14-15. I think he got 15 goals in the league in that season. But since then, he has not shown anywhere near the form that I would have expected him to. And I'm not sure he's the solution in that role anymore either. I don't know if he even deserves to be in the starting lineup. It's a very difficult situation. So he's kind of trying to fit in those two strikers together, because it makes up for that one Diabate. And Diabate was a goal scorer. He was a type of player that Ligue 1 has very few of, that you could count on him to score goals. And there are about 4 or 5 of those in the league. And he was proven. And I don't think they've got a Ligue 1 proven goal scorer anymore, which is a huge issue for Gourvenec. So I think perhaps it might be time to accept a bid for Rolón. They've had a few over the last few windows, or at least have been rumours that they have. And I need to go out and sign a striker. And I think, given that focal point, Ounas and Menez will have more space, more options to attack, more space to run into, and it'll work better for the team in general. So I think they need a new striker. Really, haven't really placed Diabate.
And Nathan, you mentioned the other week that you don't really rate Menez. Where do you stand on this?
I watched them against Lille, and it was a dreadful game, and they really didn't do anything. And Menez was middling to almost absent at times. He tried to do little bits, but never really fully clicked. I still think he's not quite fit from the looks of things, in all honesty. I think whether you carry on playing in games, it's a risk, but I think Adam makes a great point. They don't really have a focal point at the front of that team, and that's really telling, because it's meaning that players around them, where Menez maybe would benefit from someone who's would be up top on there. So would Ounas, so would Rolón. They don't look good, really, and it's a case of them finding the right players to fill in the gaps they need, because if they can, then I think they could be a good team. They've got good players in there. There's just not a team there yet, and that's a significant problem going forward for Bordeaux if they can't find anything in January as well.
All right. Adam, your prediction then?
1-1.
1-1. Bordeaux holding Monaco at home.
Yeah.
All right. I'm going to go with a 2.
Yeah, I think it's going to be a close one.
All right, I'm going to go with a 2-0 win for Monaco. Nathan?
I do not think it will be a close one. 4-0 Monaco.
4-0. Sorry, it's 4-0 or 4-1? I didn't catch that.
4-0.
4-0. Okay. All right, moving on now to Lille hosting Montpellier. Nathan, both of these teams are in form and looking to play some really attractive football, especially under interim manager Patrice Colo. For Lille, should either team have anything to fear, or should they just go for it all guns blazing?
It's a tough one given where Lille still are in the table, where they're not fully away from danger quite yet. I mean, they have lifted up the table and they are 3 points above the drop zone, but memories don't fade quickly of where they were before. But we praised Montpellier at the week on Monday as well for how terrific they were, and that was without Boudibou's really hitting form. So they can really go in all guns blazing. I think it really take off that momentum and try and push further up the table if they can. Sitting at that 12th place, I think they're definitely better than that if they can play the way they did against Paris Saint-Germain, which was a terrific result. And Lille are starting to slowly get better. They missed. They didn't have a day there at the weekend, but God heaven forbid they've got Nicolas de Préville, who was really, really good. I think we saw the the de Préville we wanted to see in that game against Bordeaux. He was active. He was looking for the ball. He was getting in behind. He's unlucky with a header that's a good save from Carasso early on, and he does it. He seizes that opportunity from the corner as well, where it sort of bundles around a bit, and he's the first one to react to it. Having someone like that in the attacking areas is going to be such a benefit for them, especially if Ronnie Lopez can get in form as well. They'll start looking much better after that, especially when they won the midweek before as well. So there's a little bit of risk that Lille still aren't completely solid defensively. They weren't really troubled by Bordeaux, but it was shown up in the midweek game. So they maybe want to throw a little bit of caution into this one, especially with Montpellier beating someone like Paris Saint-Germain. But it's a really intriguing one, I think, this one.
All right. Picks, I'm going to go with a 1-2 victory for the road side. That is Montpellier. Adam, yourself?
0-0, I think.
0-0 for these two informed teams. And Nathan, for yourself?
I'm going 1-1.
All right. Pair of draws there. So, we are running a little bit long today, but we can't ignore what is arguably the biggest match of the season. To date, in the league, that's PSG hosting Nice. PSG are badly out of sorts after their Champions League disappointment in the loss to Montpellier. But Nice welcome back Balotelli this evening. The pressure will be, though, squarely on the hosts. Adam, how should Emery set this team up in terms of formation and personnel to get what's really an imperative win?
I think it's a huge decision for Emery, because the defeat at Montpellier last weekend was a shock, and so was the draw of Ludogorets. And over the last couple of games, those two games in particular, obviously, but perhaps even slightly further back, I was sort of starting to think that they turned a corner, and it seems to have gone already. It seems there's a choice between, as is quite common really, between 4-3-3 and 4-2-3-1. The 4-2-3-1 that he's used in the last few games has got the best out of Ben Arfa. I think he's been brilliant in the last 4 or 5 games when he's come off the bench in the last 2 games. He's been absolutely fantastic. But whether it's suited the team, or whether the team, given that very slight tactical switch, are used to it yet, given how much they've played under Blanc, is almost exclusively that 4-3-3. I'm not sure whether they, given how attacking Ben Arfa is and how he's almost a support striker, that whether Verratti and whoever plays alongside him in midfield, probably Mata, maybe, whether those two players, whoever they are, whether there's perhaps they may be overrun in there, or perhaps just there's a bit too much space around them and they lose the ball in those areas a bit too easily, given they've always had that third player, Matuidi, obviously, as support. And we know that 4-3-3 works in Ligue 1. 4-3-3 PSG at home works, and although it would mean dropping Ben Arfa, which I would be very disappointed to see, given it's against Nice, his former club, and he's been fantastic in the last couple of games, it might be the safe option to revert back to 4-3-3 and persist with 4-2-3-1 later in the season when given the opportunity, because I think that's Emery's, the way Emery wants to go with the team, and that's his preferred setup. But it hasn't really gone too well in recent games so far in terms of results. It's got performances out of Ben Arfa, who's been fantastic, and it's got performances out of Lucas, who's been brilliant. But aside from that, I don't know that it's ingrained in the PSG team, given how used to playing 4-3-3 they are. So for me, I would hate to say it, but I'd go 4-3-3 and leave Ben Arfa out. And if they're chasing the game, maybe bring him on later on. But I think it's a massive game, and I think if Nice can really get a result, it genuinely marks a shift in PSG as the dominant force. And obviously, they're still the best team and they're still the best squad with the most resources, but they have real challenges if they can't win this game. So it's a big one.
Nathan, what about Nice? Should they play with their usual verve or adopt the conservative approach that most visitors have had at the Parc des Princes this season?
It's a tough one. I mean, the worry for me is they're still missing Paul Bice, so they can't really employ that 3-5-2 that was so successful in the first 10 or so games of the season. So that will niggle in the back of Lucien Favre's head of deciding whether maybe it's safer to maybe start someone like Mathieu Bodmer into that role where Bice was to secure it up, or does he go with more like the 4-2-3-1 they've employed while Bice has been out against some of the smaller teams, and trust Dante and Malang Sarr against such a attacking PSG lineup. It's a really tough one that he must be tossing and throwing through, but I would like to see them just be a little bit more. I would like to see them play the way they've been playing, because it has been working so well. I mean, whether you start in that midfield three, do you maybe start someone a little bit more defensive? So do you maybe, again, is that maybe where you throw Bodmer into the mix of maybe not starting William Cyprien maybe, and just having Seri with Bodmer, and it could be a Cogiello maybe, or something like that. It's trying to decide what will work best for them, but it's such an awkward balance to make, I think, at the moment, because if in an ideal world Bice would be there, you play a 3-5-2, it would be simple as anything, but it's not going to be that way for them. Away from home, do you be a bit more conservative against Paris Saint-Germain? But if they do get a result, they know how big a win would be. Like how even a draw would be pretty big, but a win would be enormous. And the temptation for that, especially with PSG seemingly on the ropes, I think that might be too hard to resist. So Favre might go for this one, and if he does, and they get a victory, to quote Glenn Frey, the heat is on for Unai Emery.
All right. So, what is your prediction then for this, Nathan?
I'm going to go with my heart instead of my head, and that tells me a 2-1 victory for Nice.
Okay. Adam?
I was hoping for 2-1, but I'll say 1-0 Nice. I really hope they go for it for the good of the league. I really hope they play their normal style. So 1-0
right.
Nice.
I'm going to go for a 1-1 draw myself. And that's all for today. Thank you for joining us. For Nathan Staples and Adam White, I've been Eric Devin. Please do be sure to follow us at GFFN for all the latest news. And just a late-breaking piece of news, though, it does appear that following the incident in Metz, that entire stand will be closed for the rest of the season, with season ticket holders being given the opportunity to either be placed elsewhere in the stadium or to get a refund. So no point deduction. The match will be replayed, but that's certainly a hammer blow to the pocketbooks of the hierarchy at Metz. Thank you, and have a great weekend. Do be sure to follow us throughout the weekend at GFN Matchday as well for updates from all the games around Ligue 1.